Lesson 8. Crime doesn't pay. Vocabulary of crime.
Hello. Today we're going to review the first and second conditionals, and then we're going to learn the third or unreal conditional. And we're also going to look at progressive verb forms in conditional sentences and the use of could, might and should in these sentences. First, let's learn some new vocabulary. First, we have a prison. A prison. A prison is a large building where people are kept as punishment for a crime. A jail. A jail. A jail is a place where people who have been charged with a crime are kept before they go to court. A warden. A warden. A warden is an official whose job it is to make sure that the rules are obeyed in a prison. And next we have a court. A court. A court is a building or a room where all the information concerning a crime can be given so that it can be judged. Now we have a prisoner. A prisoner. A prisoner is someone who's kept in a prison or a jail as punishment for a crime. Okay, a cell. A cell. A cell is a small room in a prison where a prisoner sleeps. Next we have solitary confinement. Solitary confinement. It's an additional punishment for a prisoner. This means that the prisoner is kept alone and is not allowed to see anyone. Okay, we have a verb now. The verb is to murder. Well, to murder is to kill someone deliberately and illegally. And now we have a murderer. A murderer. Well, a murderer is a person who commits murder. A pickpocket. A pickpocket. A pickpocket is a person who steals something from someone's pocket, maybe as you are walking down the street. A purse snatcher. A purse snatcher. This is the person who grabs someone's purse and then runs away with it. Another verb, to shoplift. To shoplift. To shoplift means to take something from a shop or a store without paying for it. And then we have a shoplifter. Murderer, snatcher. A shoplifter is a person who takes something from a shop without paying for it. Okay, a few more over here now. A burglar. A burglar. A burglar is a person who gets into shops or houses to steal things. Now we have this one, arson. Arson. Arson is a crime of deliberately making something burn, usually a building. An arsonist. An arsonist is a person who commits the crime of arson. This person deliberately lights a fire or makes a building burn. Three more. Handcuffs. Handcuffs. Handcuffs are a pair of metal rings joined by a chain used for holding a prisoner's wrists together. Shackles. Shackles are metal rings joined by a chain, and they're used for fastening a prisoner's feet or hands. They're similar to handcuffs. And lastly, we have evidence. Evidence is facts, objects, or signs that make you believe something is true. For example, fingerprints, hair, footprints are examples of evidence. So let's have a look at these words again. First we have a prison, a jail, a warden, a court, a prisoner, and a cell. There we have solitary confinement. The verb to murder, and the person, a murderer. a pickpocket, a purse snatcher. To shoplift, and the person is a shoplifter. A burglar, arson, an arsonist is the person. Handcuffs, shackles, and finally, evidence.
Conditionals.
Let's start our review. Have a look at these sentences on your TV screen. If I have enough time, I visit my uncle in prison every week. If he has enough money, he won't shoplift. If the warden gets a new secretary, he will be very happy. The lawyer will still meet with the prisoner if the prisoner has no money. Okay, well, a conditional sentence is a sentence which has a condition and a result. Now, if is used in conditional sentences. There are two clauses. That means a part of a sentence which contains a subject and a verb. It's one clause. One subject, one verb, one clause. There are two clauses in a conditional sentence, and one of them begins with the word if. Okay, so we have an if clause plus a result clause. So the clause beginning with the word if is the if clause, and the other clause is the main or the result clause. So for example, in the first sentence, if I have enough time, that's the if clause. If I have enough time, and the result clause is I visit my uncle every week. Let's put that on the board. If I have enough time, comma, I visit my uncle every week. Every week. Look at that again. If clause, if I have enough time. Result clause, I visit my uncle every week. Okay, in the fourth sentence, if the prisoner has no money is the if clause. The lawyer will still meet with the prisoner is the result clause. Okay, now a sentence can begin with the if clause or the result clause. In other words, we can have, if I have enough time, I visit my uncle every week, or we can change it. I visit my uncle every week if I have enough time. That's okay. When we begin a sentence with if, we must have the comma. If we have it the other way around, I visit my uncle every week if I have enough time. If I have enough time, comma, I visit my uncle every week. I visit my uncle every week if I have enough time, no comma. Okay, this is called the first conditional. In the first conditional, notice the verb in the if clause is in the present simple. So let's put this here. First conditional. First conditional is if plus simple present. If I have enough time, and then in the result clause, plus simple present or simple future. Okay? If I have enough time, simple present, I visit my uncle every week, simple present. Let's look at some more examples then. If the prisoners don't eat breakfast, they always get hungry in the prison yard. Now, the simple present is used in the result clause to show that something always happens, or it's a habit. It's a habitual activity or a situation. It always happens. Another example. A person will go to jail if he commits a burglary. So in the result clause, either the present simple or the future simple is used to show that a predictable fact will happen. It's going to happen every time. Another example. If Tom doesn't shoplift an apple, he will have nothing to eat tonight. The simple future is used in the result clause when the sentence concerns a particular activity or future or situation in the future. And another example. If the family isn't home tomorrow, the burglar will rob their house. So the simple present can also be used in the if clause when the sentence concerns a particular activity in the future. Well, let's practice. Rosa, what will you do if you see your friend shoplifting?
I'll be very angry. If I see my friend shoplifting, I'll tell the police.
Good for you, Rosa. Lewis, what will you do if you see an arsonist?
If I see an arsonist, I will call the fire department. Then I will call the police.
Very good. Monica, what will you do if you see a prisoner escape from jail?
I will chase him if I see a prisoner escape from jail. I'm very fast, and I will use my handcuffs.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh.
I have handcuffs and they're toys.
The toys, okay. Thank you very much, everybody. And now, if you look and listen, you can practice more.
Look and listen.
The murderer will kill his wife if he finds a gun. The prisoners can't use the telephone if they are in solitary confinement. If a burglar enters my house, I will shoot him. If a purse snatcher grabs your purse, you will be sorry.
Read and repeat.
Okay, now let's look at the second conditional. Take a look at these sentences. If I were a warden, this prisoner wouldn't be here. The shoplifter would be taken to jail if I were the shop owner. If the arsonist had some petrol, he would start a fire. Larry wouldn't be a burglar if he had won the lottery. A sentence in the second conditional expresses something that is not true in the future or in the present. So in the first sentence, in truth, I am not a warden. In the second sentence, I am not a shop owner. In truth, really right now, I am not a shop owner. In the third sentence, the arsonist doesn't have petrol. And in the fourth sentence, in truth, Larry would not be a burglar if he won the lottery. So to make the second conditional, we use this formula. We have the if clause plus the simple present. Then we have the result clause would plus simple form. So this is our if clause, if plus simple present, and then would plus simple form. Let's put that here. The if clause and over here, the result clause. Let's practice this now. Let's pretend we are criminals. What would you do if you were an arsonist, Monica?
I don't want to be an arsonist. If I were an arsonist, I would set fires in empty buildings and so that no one can get burned.
That's a good idea. So, Rosa, what would you do if you were a shoplifter?
I would see a psychiatrist if I were a shoplifter. Shoplifting isn't normal.
You're right. And Lewis, what would you do if you were a burglar?
If I went into someone else's house to steal something, I would be very quiet. I mustn't get caught.
Very good. Thank you, everybody. And now, if I were you, I would look and I would listen very carefully.
Look and listen.
The warden would change his job if his wife found a job. The prisoner would escape if he had the chance. Bonnie would like to visit the prison if her husband let her. If the weather were nice today, the prisoners would go into the yard.
Read and repeat.
Well, now let's learn past or unreal conditionals. So please take a look at these sentences. If the prisoner had had enough time, he would have made a new weapon. The warden would have been angry if he had known the guard gave the prisoner a cigarette. If the pickpocket had been quicker, he wouldn't have been caught. The burglar would have been rich if he had emptied the safe. Well, the third conditional can be used to describe ideas about past situations or events that did not happen. The past perfect tense is used in the if clause. So let's look at the formula. We have if plus past perfect, comma, would have plus past participle. Okay. If plus past perfect, this is our if clause. And then would have plus past participle, our result clause. Let's have a look at these examples. Okay, if the prisoner had told me about the problem, I would have helped him. So in truth, the prisoner did not tell me in the past. It's an untrue past situation, so the third conditional is used. Another example. If the burglar had studied the house plan better, he wouldn't have been arrested. So what actually happened? The burglar didn't study the house plan. So he was arrested. It's an untrue past action, so we use the third conditional. Okay, the next example. The prisoner wouldn't have broken his arm if he hadn't slipped on the ice. So what really happened? The prisoner slipped on the ice and broke his arm. So in this sentence, it's an untrue past situation. Again, we use the third conditional. So when we're speaking, the auxiliary verbs or the helping verbs are almost always contracted. For example, here, if you'd told me, comma, I would have helped the prisoner. So for speaking, we'd say, if you'd told me, I would have helped the prisoner. Just be careful, it's not I would have, but I would have. If you'd told me, I would have helped the prisoner. That's when we're speaking. Well, let's practice these now. Okay, so do you understand why we use the third conditional?
Of course. We use it for things that happen in the past.
Great, and do you know what verb tenses we use?
We use past perfect in the if clause. We use would have plus past participle in the result clause.
Good, so let's try to use this conditional. Rosa, what do you know about Adolf Hitler?
He was a bad man. If I had known him, I would have put him in prison before the war.
I agree. And Monica, what do you know about Lech Walesa?
He was a great man. He was in prison too. If I had met him, I would have given him a big kiss.
Good, okay, he was a good man. And Luis, what do you know about Franco?
Franco was a Spanish dictator. We didn't like him in Portugal. I would have murdered him if I had seen him.
That's not nice, but you're right, he was a bad person. Okay, so if these people had looked and listened, they would have spoken English better. And now it's time for you to look and listen.
Look and listen.
If I had known the prisoner was a convicted murderer, I would have been more careful. If Manson hadn't gone to prison, more people would have been killed. The arsonist would have burned more buildings if he hadn't gotten arrested. The purse snatcher wouldn't have been caught if he hadn't had a sore foot.
Read and repeat.
Before we continue, let's look at the three conditionals together. Okay, let's practice all the conditionals. Monica, I have a friend who's in prison. He isn't a bad person. What do you think?
Tell me his name, give me his address. If I have enough time, I will write him a letter.
I think he'd like that. Lewis, what do you think?
I think all prisoners are bad. If he was smart, he wouldn't be in prison. Sorry.
Okay, I understand. And Rosa, how about you?
I don't know. Maybe he wouldn't have any kind of life if he hadn't had you as a friend.
That's very nice, Rosa. Thank you very much, everybody. Okay, so now let's look at the use of progressive verb forms in conditional sentences. Please take a look at these sentences. If it weren't raining now, the prisoners would play basketball in the yard. If I weren't living in New York, I would visit my brother in San Quentin prison. If it had not been raining, the prisoners would have played basketball in the yard. If I had been living in California, I would have been working at San Quentin prison. Well, in conditional sentences, progressive verb forms are used in progressive situations. Now let's look at could, might, and should in conditional sentences. First, let's look at could. If I were a prisoner, I couldn't visit my grandmother. If Tim could sing as well as his mother, he wouldn't be in prison. Lou could have gone to the prison to visit his brother if he had had a bus ticket. Okay, well in these sentences, could means the ability to do something. So in the first sentence, couldn't visit means wouldn't be able to visit. In the second sentence, could sing means was able to sing. And in the third sentence, could have gone means would have been able to go. Now, let's look at might. Jack might go to prison if he doesn't find a good lawyer. If Henry was a better person, he might not be in prison. If Frank had told me about his shoplifting problem, I might have been able to help him. In these sentences, might refers to possibility. So in the first sentence, might go means maybe he will go. And in the second sentence, might not be means maybe he would not be. And in the third sentence, might have been able to means maybe he would have been able to. And let's finish with a look at should. So, first sentence was should. If the prisoner should call, tell him I will speak with his lawyer tomorrow. If there should be another prison riot, the safety of the guards would be in jeopardy. So in these two sentences, should call and should be indicate a degree of uncertainty or some doubt. Well, let's practice might, could, and should. Okay, so Lewis, what could you do if you were a prisoner?
I couldn't do anything if I were a prisoner. I could sit in my cell. I could read books maybe.
You're right. And Monica?
If I were a prisoner, I might kill myself. If my father had been a prisoner, I would have been very embarrassed.
I'm sure you would have been very embarrassed. And Rosa?
I don't want to think about it. If a warden or prisoner should call my house, I would scream.
I'm sure you would. Thank you very much, everybody. And now, it might be a good idea if you look and listen.
Look and listen.
I could carry a gun if I were a prison guard. If the police could have found some evidence, they'd have convicted Gary. If the arsonist isn't caught, I might move to a different state. If you were a better pickpocket, you might get rich.
Read and repeat. Review.
Here's one last thing we should look at before we do some exercises. First sentence, have a look at these sentences on your TV screen. Should the prisoner call, please take a message. Had I known, I would have called the jail. Were I you, I wouldn't steal that. So sometimes when we have were, had, past perfect, or should, if isn't used. And in these situations, the subject and the verb are reversed or inverted. Well, now it's time for some exercises. Let's do an exercise using the first conditional. Lewis, you are a warden. And I want you to give us 3 sentences using the first conditional. Monica, you're an arsonist. Rosa, you are a prisoner. Okay, what are your sentences, Luis?
If I like the prisoner, I will not put him in solitary confinement. If I don't like the prisoner, he won't get a TV in his room. The new TV room will be used today if the prisoners are good.
Good sentences, Lewis. Okay, Monica, what are your sentences?
If I burn that building, I will be caught. I will start the fire in the basement if there are people inside. If it's a good fire, I will stay and watch it. I'm sorry, but I don't like being arsonist.
I'm sorry about that. Good sentences, though. And Rosa, how about your sentences?
If I don't want to go to solitary confinement, it will be good. I will escape if I have the chance. If I find a knife, I'll make a hole in the wall.
Excellent work, everybody. So now, let's try an exercise with the second conditional. This can be a fill-in-the-blanks exercise with the appropriate verb in the second conditional. Rosa, you can go first. If the pickpocket something enough time, comma, he something 5 wallets. If the pickpocket something enough time, he something 5 wallets. What do you think?
2 verbs. That's difficult.
Mm-hmm.
If the pickpocket had enough time, he would steal 5 wallets.
Good. If the pickpocket had enough time, he would steal 5 wallets. Okay. Monica, here's one for you. The prisoner something to his parents if the guard something him a pen. The prisoner something to his parents if the guard something him a pen.
The prisoner would write to his parents if the guard gave him a pen.
Good, if the guard gave. The prisoner would write to his parents if the guard gave him a pen. And Luis, the last one for you. If the shoplifter something a larger coat, comma, he something to hide more things. If the shoplifter something a larger coat, he something to hide more things. What's the answer, do you think?
If the shoplifter wore a larger coat, he would be able to hide more things.
Good. He would be able to hide more things. If the shoplifter wore a larger coat, he would be able to hide more things. Thank you. And now let's do an exercise using the third conditional. This time I'll give you the verbs and you fill in the blanks with the appropriate tense. Lewis, you go first this time. Let's just make some space on the board. What's the first one? It is if the arsonist, and we have the verb have, more gasoline, he, and the verb is set more fires. What do you think, Lewis?
If the arsonist had more gasoline, he would have set more fires.
Good. If the arsonist had more gasoline, he would have set more fires. Excellent. Okay. Rosa, this one's for you. Caught, and the verb is start, on time, if the prisoner something, and the verb is be, so unruly. Okay, what do you think the answer is, Rosa?
Court would have started on time if the prisoner hadn't been so unruly.
Good. Bean. Court would have started on time if the prisoner hadn't been so unruly. Okay, the last one's for you, Monica. If the police something, the verb is find, some evidence, comma, the woman, and the verb is not release, from jail. What do you think it is, Monica?
If the police had found some evidence, the woman wouldn't have been released from jail.
Good. Release, we'll put it up there. If the police had found some evidence, the woman wouldn't have been released from jail. Okay, that's excellent work. Thank you all. Now, one more quick exercise. This time, let's fill in the blanks again with an appropriate verb. Okay, Monica, I want you to use could in your sentence. Lewis, can you please use might?
Yes.
And Rosa, I want you to use should. Okay, Monica, here's your sentence. If Tom were a policeman, he, something, a gun. Okay, what do you think, Monica?
If Tom were a policeman, he could carry a gun.
Okay, good. If Tom were a policeman, he could carry a gun. Good work. Rosa, here's yours. If the prisoner, something, comma, shoot him. Very dramatic.
If the prisoner should escape, shoot him.
Okay. If the prisoner should escape, shoot him. And the last one for you, Lewis. If Kevin had told me about his problem, comma, he, something, in prison today. What do you think, Lewis?
If Kevin had told me about his problem, he might not be in prison today.
Good. If Kevin had told me about his problem, he might not be in prison today. Good job, everyone. And now it's time to listen and write.
Listen and write.
Listen and write these sentences. Number 1. The prisoner will work in the garden today if he isn't sick. Number 2. If the prisoner has enough time, he writes an article for the prison newspaper every week. Number 3. If Greg had enough money, he would buy things instead of shoplifting them. Number 4. Yvonne would have written to her brother in prison more often if she hadn't lost his address. Number 5. The arsonist would have been captured if the police had arrived sooner. Number 6. If Jason weren't studying right now, he would call the warden. Number 7. If the prisoner should leave, call the guard. Number 8. I might get a job in the prison if I pass the exam. Number 9. If Brian weren't a prisoner, he could move with his family to Detroit. And number 10. Had she loved Tony, he wouldn't be in jail. Well, now, check your work. Number 1. The prisoner will work in the garden today if he isn't sick. Number 2. If the prisoner has enough time, he writes an article for the prison newspaper every week. Number 3. If Greg had enough money, he would buy things instead of shoplifting them. Number 4. Yvonne would have written to her brother in prison more often if she hadn't lost his address. Number 5. The arsonist would have been captured if the police had arrived sooner. Number 6. If Jason weren't studying right now, he would call the warden. Number 7. If the prisoner should leave, call the guard. Number 8. I might get a job in the prison if I pass the exam. Number 9. If Brian weren't a prisoner, he could move with his family to Detroit. And number 10. Had she loved Tony, he wouldn't be in jail. Now read the story and answer the questions.
Read and answer.
King's Prison was built in 1972. It's near San Diego. It is a small prison. If the state had had more money, they would have built a bigger prison. The prison has 200 cells in the main block. It also has 6 solitary confinement cells. The prison is very dangerous. If there weren't so many guards, it would be more dangerous. There are 95 guards with 40 on duty at any one time. Some of the prisoners aren't so bad. These prisoners are allowed more time in the yard. Manuel is the worst prisoner. If the lawyers find enough evidence for a first-degree murder conviction, he will be executed. Some of the prisoners think Manuel wants to die. Now he is in solitary confinement and can't speak with anyone. The only time he has contact with another person is when his meals are handed to him through a slot in the door. We'll now listen and answer the questions. Number 1. When was King's Prison built? Number 2. Where is King's Prison? Number 3. What would the state have done if they had had more money? Number 4. How many cells are there in the main block? Number 5. What would make the prison more dangerous? Number 6. How many guards are there? Number 7. What are good prisoners allowed? Number 8. Who is the worst prisoner at King's Prison? Number 9. What will happen if the lawyers find enough evidence? Number 10. How does Manuel get his meals? Well, now check your work. Number 1. When was King's Prison built? It was built in 1972. Number 2. Where is King's Prison? It is near San Diego. Number 3. What would the state have done if they had had more money? They would have built a larger prison. Number 4. How many cells are there in the main block? There are 200 cells. Number 5. What would make the prison more dangerous? If there were fewer guards, the prison would be more dangerous. Number 6. How many guards are there? There are 95 guards. Number 7. What are good prisoners allowed? They are allowed more time in the yard. Number 8. Who is the worst prisoner at King's Prison? Manuel is the worst prisoner at King's Prison. Number 9. What will happen if the lawyers find enough evidence? If the lawyers find enough evidence, Manuel will be executed. Number 10. How does Manuel get his meals? They are handed to him through a slot in the door. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Practicing English.
I can't believe this.
What's the matter, Carrie?
I have the worst luck in the world. I was at an internet cafe this morning and someone stole my cell phone.
Oh no, that's terrible. How did that happen?
Well, I was using the computer and drinking coffee. I was pretty busy in there and I used my phone. I left it out in case it rang again. I think I left it on my desk. Anyway, I was in the elevator when I went to use it, and I looked my bag and it wasn't there.
Are you sure it's not somewhere else? Your purse, maybe?
I'm sure it's gone. I looked all the places it would be, and it's just not with me. Someone must have picked it up in the cafe and stolen it. I didn't even miss it till I got here.
Why don't you go back to the cafe and see if someone can help you? Maybe someone found it.
I guess it's possible. I hope the police find the guy who did this. I love my phone, and all my numbers are in there. This really stinks.
You're right. Getting something stolen that you use every day really is the worst. Look, I don't have a class now, so I can go back to the cafe with you.
I hate this, but thanks for coming with me. Let's go to the cafe and see if they can tell us anything.
Sure.
Thanks for everything.
Hey Dave, have you seen Carrie today? She seems like she's in a really crabby and bad mood.
Yeah, she's had a really bad day. Her cell phone was stolen this morning.
Oh, that explains it.
Hi guys.
Hey, sorry to hear about what happened to you this morning. Sorry about your phone.
Oh, thanks. But it just really makes me mad. If they find the creep who stole my phone, they should put him in jail.
Where did it happen?
I was at the internet cafe by school. It was taken right off the desk I was working on.
Did you go back to the cafe?
Yeah, Dave and I went back.
What did they say?
Yeah, they were all sorry and everything, but they have signs all over advising people to be careful of their possessions, and I guess I wasn't being too careful.
You know, the kind of people that do these crimes are very good at it, unfortunately. Usually, it's a pair of thieves. One person asks you for a cigarette or for change, and then while you're looking at them, the other grabs your stuff.
All I know is they can't find a jail bad enough for whoever stole my phone. I want them locked up. If the world was a fair place, this kind of thing wouldn't happen.
Don't be too hard on yourself, Carrie. Monica's right. You were probably hit by guys who do this all the time.
Yeah, but I just feel so stupid. Maybe if I'd been more careful, this wouldn't have happened. So the worst part is, I'm mad at myself.
Look, we live in a big city, so this kind of crime is just part of urban living.
I guess you're right, Monica.
Carrie, if it'd make you feel any better, I have a student who's had to replace her cell phone 4 times this year. 2 were lost and 2 were stolen.
So there is someone out there with worse luck than me.
Come on, just be more careful next time you're in a public place, and you should be fine.
Well, for some people getting things stolen is a way of life, but I grew up in a small town, and no one ever stole anything like they do in the city. I just get so angry when I think about someone using my phone, or selling it for a few dollars.
Look, it's over. There's nothing you could do about it now.
You're right.
Of course.
Well, there's only one thing left to do.
What's that?
Does anyone want to go shopping with me later?
Okay.
Nothing that I can't come back to. Let's go phone shopping.
Check, please.